Welcome to Net Gain. This is networking encouragement training for snow, landscape, and facility services professionals, helping employees find and work in their strengths to have the most satisfying career, and then helping companies to exceed goals through finding, training, and retaining the best team. I'm your host, Evan Tashwire from Jack of All People Trades. This is going to be an episode of what we call Net Gain Shorts, where I'm going to be sharing a less than 15-minute episode, really honing in on a specific topic that's relevant for you as snow and landscape pros or professionals even in general. And then I'm also going to be having different types of net gain. So we're going to have net gain live. That's where we have a guest on, and we actually have that at a set time. So you can come on and not only listen to the podcast live, but you can also network with the guest afterwards. So this is, we say it's the podcast where you can talk to the guests. In addition to that, we also have our E for Encouragement series, where I'm going to be having on guests that have different encouraging stories that we can share with you. We're also going to do what I call the people plan. So that's going to be where I talk about topics more people specific. So how to hire, train, onboard, retain, engage the best team. So if you're really looking for how do I solve my people problem, whether that's finding enough people or retaining people or giving a career path to the right people, that's what the people plan is going to be about. But today we're going to get on Net Gain Shorts, and I'm actually going to talk about iterating and constant improvement. So before I jump into that, if you do like what you hear here on Net Gain, make sure you sign up for the Net Gain Live list. Anywhere you're listening to this, there's a sign up link there. You'll be automatically registered for all the Net Gain Live series. You can come as you want, as your schedule allows. And then also drop us a review, drop us some comments, and definitely talk about, what's good about Net Gain and what you want to see more of. But today on this Net Gain Short, I'm going to talk about iteration and constant improvement. And I'm actually going to do it through telling the story of how Net Gain came to be. So first of all, first things first is we're going to talk about how I even started. So how I started with Net Gain, first of all, I wasn't even thinking about having a podcast, or the name Net Gain wasn't in the picture. I actually started when I was starting up Jack of All People Trades. I had gone to the SIMA Symposium in Pittsburgh, and I was thinking about restarting my consulting business at that time. And when SIMA was in my city, it was kind of a no-brainer of like, well, if you're going to do it, this is a golden opportunity for you to be there. So I went to one of the sessions that Bill Butts, shout out to Bill Butts. Make sure you check out his Sales Talk podcast if you haven't, if you want stuff on sales. But he was leading a session on doing lunch and learns as a way to increase sales, basically saying that if you buy lunch and invite a bunch of property managers, educate them on what you do with snow and why it's important to manage risk and all the things that are important with snow service, you can actually provide them that free education, but then it's also time to network and move forward. So that was what I went to. And when I listened, I said, you know what, lunch and learns, that's interesting. You know what, I can pivot and do that for me trying to find clients, because I'm a teacher by trade. I'm a trainer by trade. So I can do some free lunch and learns to show what I can do and use that as a time to really build my client base. So the takeaway there is, number one, put yourself in positions where you can learn, and whether it's training, the SIMA Symposium, different local shows, independent reading, put yourself in a position where you can learn. And then when you do learn, so I know a lot of people, when they go to the symposium or different snow shows, they say it's all about the networking, and it is about the networking. What I'm saying is not a takeaway from that, but it's more an and or an add-on and an improvement. When you do go to the live sessions, ask yourself, what is one thing I'm going to start, stop, or continue doing based on what I learned today? And then use that to really put that into action. So that's what I did in that session with Bill. Is I said, okay, I'm going to start doing free lunch and learns for people in the snow and landscape industry as a way to build my client base. So then I had gone home that summer. That was 2024. I had started some free lunch and learns. They were good. They were good topics, but they were also minimally attended. So the takeaway here is, number one, you need to start. Because I love the quote that says you either win or you learn. So in my case, I was winning a little bit with the people that were there. I was winning in getting to practice and get my name out. But I was also learning that it was really tough for people to get away during the day to take a lunch and learn. Maybe even if it was a webinar sent to them later, they might not watch it because they got so much going on. So I was really thinking, okay, what can I do to get more people here? So what I did next was I really started talking to others in the snow industry industry, snow and landscape, specifically snow. I attended events. I went to Snow Alliance. I learned really what draws people to events, what gets people to show up. And the one thing that people kept saying was the networking. So I really thought about that is, okay, is there a way I can incorporate networking in what I'm doing? Because right now, what I'm doing with Lunch and Learns is simply just showing up and doing the lunch and learn, nothing more. So, I'm teaching, hey, do you have any questions? Seeing the questions in chat, and then we go home versus if I actually open this up for networking, this could be a little bit different. So the takeaway here is always when you're doing anything, get feedback, network with others. I always say the smartest person in the room is the room itself. So definitely see what other people have to say and, make small adjustments off of that. So when I thought about that, that's where net gain, networking, encouragement, and training really came about because I thought, what if I did something like the Lunch and Learn that was still teaching, hence the T in net gain training, but I also added an encouragement because I'm an encouraging person. And also, since I want it to be more network based, what if I invited a guest? Because if I'm inviting guests in, then that gives somebody else a little bit of skin in the game to invite their people. And it also gives people in the industry, if I'm inviting, say, a manufacturer of equipment or somebody I had Steve Smythe from Storm Academy on. I had Craig Sandman on in an episode I'm going to be releasing upcoming from Hilltip. Rob Tebow. So it gives people somebody to see if they're like, hey, I was interested in backblades. Oh, the guy from Top Gun Backblades is going to be on Net Gain. Let me come and talk to him and let me learn. So it gave me something additional. So what the takeaway is here is when you get that feedback, try new things and really pivot off of what you learn, but also keep your purpose in mind. So my purpose, obviously, from a consulting side was to be able to build my client base, but also deliver value for the industry as a whole. And then for those who wanted to go a little deeper, have that, show them what I can do and be able to go deeper as clients. So keep in mind your purpose, but also try new things and be able to pivot. And then finally, where did this podcast come from? So really the takeaway with the podcast is just think about constant improvement. Always ask yourself the question, what can I do with what's in my hand? Can I do more with what's in my hand? So if you're a company owner or leader, are there strengths or skills in your team that you haven't tapped into yet? If you're an individual, are there different things at work that maybe you could try? Are there more efficient ways to do your job that you haven't tapped into yet? Are there things on your professional development that you could do? Maybe you've been meaning to read books and you haven't. Maybe you've been meaning to go to, a local show or the SIMA Symposium and you haven't. Those are different things you can do. So for me, the podcast was like, well, I'm already recording these. I'm putting them on YouTube. I'm doing them live. But how can I get to a bigger audience? And I listen to podcasts. Obviously, if you follow Jack of All People Trades on LinkedIn, I have my walking, running, and learning series where I review different podcast episodes, post some key takeaways. So I just kind of thought, you're already doing it. Why don't you just do that for yourself? You already know about, takeaways. You kind of have a structure with how you share content online. Repurpose that and talk about it when you're actually on here. So you'll probably see some of the takeaways I've pulled out from walking, running, and learning, us going a little bit deeper here on Net Gain. So that's really what it came down to is just, again, an idea from a session, start doing something from there, see how it's going, take feedback, build on what's working, pivot on what's not, and then continue to iterate. And here's the thing, we're going to continue to iterate, even with the Net Gain podcast, how we do it, different type of episodes, cadence. I'm going to be open to feedback, pivoting on all that, while still sticking to the core purpose of, why I exist is, why I get up. My why is to help people to maximize and find and maximize their strengths so that they can have careers they thrive in. And then on the company side, to put people in positions where they're working in their strengths so that company goals are exceeded. At the end of the day, if that's a too long didn't read, I believe in the win-win workplace. I believe we can have a workplace where employees are engaged and love what they do, and company goals are exceeded because of that. So that's been your Net Gain short on iteration and constant improvement. Just like I said in the first bit, I encourage you to think of one thing that you will either start, stop, or continue doing based on what you listened to today. So I encourage you with some action going forward. Definitely take that. If you like what you're hearing here, give us that review, give us that 5-star review with some good comments, and also sign up for the Net Gain live list and show up and not only hear us record live, but then network with the guests. So this is Evan Tashwire, Jack of All People Trades, Net Gain, networking, encouragement, and training. Snow fight wind. It's us against the storm.